Imagine this. It's an ordinary morning. You wake up, grab your phone, and see a message from someone you know. Why are you being so sensitive? Just one sentence, but it hits you. You pause wondering, am I really too sensitive, or am I simply noticing something others choose to ignore? I've heard that question hundreds of times, from clients, from friends, even from people who had been deeply hurt but couldn't explain why. You see, in today's world of polite smiles and sweet words, manipulation doesn't come in the form of punches anymore. It comes disguised as innocent questions. Questions that make you doubt yourself. When someone says, "You trust me, right?" they're not really asking, they're testing how blind your faith can be. I once worked with a woman named Sarah. She was a brilliant employee at a major tech company, confident, cheerful, capable. But one day she sat across from me, eyes filled with tears, and said, "Ethan, I don't trust my own feelings anymore. Every time something feels wrong, they tell me I'm overreacting, too sensitive, too suspicious." Have you ever been there? When your heart tries to warn you, but the people around you convince you that you are the problem? That's how skilled manipulators work. They don't need to lie outright, they just plant a seed of doubt and let you destroy your own peace. I call it the game of toxic questions. And if you don't recognize it, you'll soon lose sight of where you end and they begin. But don't worry, Stoic philosophy has been around for over 2,000 years, built exactly to help people escape these traps. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That line might sound ancient, but it's the perfect truth for our modern age, a time where words can quietly distort our entire reality. Remember this, a Stoic doesn't try to control others, they learn to control themselves. When someone asks, "Why are you being so sensitive?" you don't need to respond with anger or silence. You can simply smile and say, "I'm not sensitive, I'm observant." That's not just a comeback, it's a declaration of awakening. After years of working with hundreds of people, CEOs, heartbroken lovers, young adults learning boundaries, I've realized this truth. Manipulators only win when you lose your calm. They feed on your reactions, like parasites living off your emotions. But the moment you stay centered, when you look at them without fear, without judgment, their power disappears. That's why Stoicism isn't just dusty philosophy from old books. It's the art of living with clarity in a chaotic world. When you understand what's within your control, your thoughts, your reactions, your actions, and what isn't, as there's other people's emotions, accusations, or games, that's when you become truly free. So imagine this again. Someone tries to make you feel small with a question laced with guilt. You don't react, you breathe, you look, you smile. And in that moment you realize they no longer control you. That's the moment you become a modern Stoic. And today, in this video, we'll explore exactly that. 8 Stoic insights that help you see through manipulation, stay calm in chaos, and become unshakable. Not to make you colder, but to make you wiser, stronger, and freer. In a world that constantly tries to pull you away from yourself. 1. Why are you being so sensitive? When awareness is mistaken for weakness, there's a strange paradox in our culture. We praise people for being calm, but mock those who feel deeply. A client of mine, Dave, a seasoned investor, once said to me, "Ethan, I lost millions because I ignored my intuition. I thought I was too sensitive. Turns out that instinct was trying to protect me." Stoics never see sensitivity as weakness. Sensitivity is awareness. When someone makes you uneasy, it's not because you're fragile, it's because your mind detects misalignment in their energy. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who sees the cracks in the wall first saves the house." So next time someone says, "You're too sensitive," smile and answer, "I'm not sensitive, I'm observant." That awareness might just save you from betrayal, bad deals, or quiet manipulation. 2. You trust me, right? When trust becomes a weapon, a friend once told me about her marriage. Every time she questioned something, her husband would say, "Don't you trust me?" "We're married, aren't we?" So she stayed silent, until the day she found out he'd been lying for years. In Stoicism, trust isn't a gift, it's something earned through consistency. Epictetus wrote, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When someone demands blind trust, they're not seeking honesty, they're seeking control. So if someone asks you, "Don't you trust me?" pause, breathe, and calmly reply with, "I trust truth more than words." That one line reclaims your power. 3. Are you accusing me of something? When the victim becomes the villain, it's one of the oldest tricks in the manipulator's book, reversal. You confront them with facts, they flip the script. Suddenly you're the bad guy. A woman once told me, every time I asked where my husband was, he'd get angry. "Are you accusing me?" And then I'd end up apologizing. Les. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best answer to anger is silence." The Stoic doesn't play emotional chess. When someone throws that question at you, look at them calmly and say, "Should I be?" 3 words, but they pierce the mask, because truth doesn't panic, only lies do. 4. Would I ever lie to you? When performance replaces honesty, this question sounds tender, even wounded, but it's pure theatre. When someone insists, "Would I ever lie to you?" it's not about truth, it's about guilt. They want you to feel ashamed for doubting them. Seneca wrote, "If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it." An honest person doesn't need to perform innocence, they live it. So the next time someone asks, "Would I ever lie to you?" just smile and say, "That's not the question. The question is, would I know if you did?" Because awareness is your armor. 5. Can't we just move on? When peace becomes a sweet trap, this is the liar's final move. When they can no longer argue, they try to wear you down. "Can't we just move on?" sounds noble, almost mature, as if they only want peace. But in reality, it's a way to avoid accountability. I once spoke with a man named Robert. After being betrayed by his business partner, he tried to have an honest conversation, but the other man kept saying, "Robert, stop digging up the past. Let's forget it. We're adults." And I told Robert, real adults don't bury the truth. They face it. A Stoic understands that peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from clarity. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it's not true, don't say it. If it's not right, don't do it." So when someone tells you, "Let's just forget it," remember, they're not seeking peace. They're seeking to bury the truth. The Stoic response should be calm and firm. "I'll let go, but only when I understand what really happened." That's not stubbornness, that's loyalty to truth. 6. Do you truly understand control? Learning what's yours and what isn't. Most of our suffering begins with one illusion, the belief that we can control everything. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, taught, "Some things are within our control and some are not." That simple truth opens the door to freedom. Manipulators exploit this illusion of control. They'll say, "If you loved me, you'd change. If you were smart, you'd do it my way. If you really cared, you wouldn't question me." These are emotional traps, ways to make you feel responsible for their feelings. But here's the truth. You cannot control how others feel. You can only control your own response. The modern Stoic doesn't seek to win against others. They seek to free themselves from emotional dependency. Once you understand the limits of control, guilt loses its grip, and no one can use fear to manipulate you again. 7. Emotions are the battlefield in Busu, and reason is the sword. I often tell my students, a manipulator doesn't need facts, they just need you to lose your calm. It's a pattern I've seen everywhere, in families, workplaces, even love. When they provoke you and you react in anger, you've already lost. That's why Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about mastering it. Seneca once said, "No one can make you angry without your consent." And that's the key. Anger is a choice, even if it doesn't feel like one. A person who learns to pause before reacting to a stirred, even for 3 seconds, steps into true Stoic power. I once coached a young CEO who was often provoked in meetings. He told me, "Ethan, I can't stay calm when they attack me publicly." So I asked him, who controls your emotions, them or you? Weeks later, he changed completely. He no longer reacted impulsively. He listened, smiled, and spoke only when it mattered. He told me, "I realized that when I stayed silent, they lost their power." That's the essence of Stoic wisdom, turning calmness into strength and silence into victory. 8. The awakened are the most feared. The world doesn't fear those who shout, it fears those who see clearly and speak only when necessary. A Stoic doesn't fight to prove they're right, they observe, they understand, and then they act quietly. I once had a student who escaped a manipulative relationship. She didn't argue, she didn't seek revenge, she simply wrote down what happened, accepted the truth, and walked away. She told me, "Ethan, I don't need to win, I just need to be free." That's the beauty of modern Stoicism, calm strength, silent confidence, inner freedom. True peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict, but from standing firm in your truth. Seneca once said, "The one who sees the world as it truly is can no longer be threatened by it." You're not cruel for demanding honesty, you're not weak for pausing to think, you're simply awake. And in a world full of illusion, the awakened are always the ones that darkness fears most. Life will always test your calm. There will always be people who twist your words, who guilt you for asking questions, who call your awareness a flaw. But the Stoic doesn't run from the storm, they learn to stand still within it. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of clarity. I once met a woman who said, "Ethan, I have spent my life trying to please everyone. And the more I tried, the more I lost myself." And I told her, that's when you're ready for Stoicism. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be cold, it teaches you to know who you are, to no longer be defined by someone else's lies, emotions, or manipulation, to feel deeply yet stay steady, to care but never collapse. When someone says, "You're too sensitive," there's a smile. When someone says, "Don't you trust me?" look at them in silence. When someone pleads, "Can't we just move on?" reply gently, "I'll move on when I understand." That's inner freedom. When no one's words can pull you away from yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Greater than peace comes when you stop arguing with reality." And maybe that's why Stoics carry that unshakable calm. Amid chaos, they hear the quiet rhythm of their own hearts. In darkness, they walk steady, because the light they follow isn't out there, it's within. If you've ever felt tired, misunderstood, or wondered, "Why do I always have to be strong?" remember this, you don't need to be strong, you just need to be clear. Clarity gives birth to strength, and when you know what's in your control, no one can take your peace again. The Stoic isn't unfeeling, they feel deeply, they just refuse to let emotion rule their worth. They know truth can hurt, but it never betrays. So if these words reached you today, I want you to remember, you are not cruel for wanting clarity, you are not distant for choosing silence, you are awake, and in a world full of illusions, The awake will always be the ones who set themselves free. Live with clarity, walk with calm, and when the world tries to make you doubt yourself, return here to this space, to Stoic Awakening More, where we learn to stay centered in a chaotic world. And if today's message resonated with you, write 3 simple words in the comments. I choose clarity. Because that's not just a statement, it's a way of life. The Stoic path, calm, clear and unshakable.